let's go over some Pac-12 title scenarios, not in terms of predicting what's going to happen, but it's just worth noting kind of like the dominoes that are about to start falling in the Pac-12 race, because UCLA beating Utah, that shifts everything. I mean, Mark, your podcast is Big Ten Paradigm at the College Gridiron Coast to Coast Network. Well, UCLA has shifted the Pac-12 paradigm in terms of the center of gravity in the race. It's now, Utah figured to be the unbeaten team heading into this USC game, but instead it's USC and also UCLA unbeaten, and also Oregon unbeaten in Pac-12 play heading into these two showdowns these next 2 weeks. So one of the things to look for in terms of tiebreakers, because let's remember, it's not a division champion versus division champion setup. It's now just the top two teams in the Pac-12. So tiebreakers involving teams from different geographical parts of the Pac-12 are now relevant. So one of the main tiebreakers is, after head-to-head, it's the records against common opponents. So the higher common opponent, the higher finishing common opponent is one of those tiebreakers. And so for that reason, USC fans need to be rooting for Washington State, because if Washington State finishes higher rather than lower in the Pac-12, like if Washington State can finish fourth behind USC, UCLA, and Oregon, Washington State could be the tiebreaker. So UCLA does not play Washington State. USC and Oregon have Washington State on their schedules. So if USC and Oregon, both with wins over Washington State, if USC or Oregon gets into a tiebreaker with UCLA for the second spot in the Pac-12 championship game, then having the win over Washington State in the back pocket is a tiebreaker. So, and then the other point to make is that Washington State will host Utah later this season. So if Washington State can beat Utah, that means that if USC loses to Utah, but Washington State takes care of Utah, USC doesn't have to worry about a head-to-head tiebreaker against Utah. And that means if Utah has 2 losses, Utah can then go to Oregon, beat the Ducks, and USC doesn't suffer in terms of a head-to-head to Utah because it still has 1 fewer conference loss. So USC fans need to put on their Butch the Cougar costumes. Also talk to Elizabeth Chilton, whom Tony Altimore talked to. Elizabeth Chilton is the chancellor at Washington State University. Tony Altimore interviewed Chancellor Chilton last week on The Voice of College Football. You want to check that out to get a look behind the curtain at how an administrator runs a university, coordinates with the athletic department. Very revealing interview. But beyond that, USC fans do need Washington State to do well in the case we get to a tiebreaker. And then, the other teams that are in the chase, well, they want the opponents that they played to do well. So like UCLA beat Washington. Okay. So look, UCLA fans definitely rooting for Washington to pick things back up after losing to Arizona State. UCLA fans need that Washington win to be valuable. And Oregon needs its own set of conference wins to be valuable. So you're like Oregon, and how all those other teams match up. You want those cross-division or at least cross-geography teams that you played that the other team didn't play. You want those particular Pac-12 wins to be valuable under the tiebreaker system. So it's just worth kind of giving a little bit of a taste of what we could face if we get a 2 or 3 team tie in the standings at the end of the Pac-12 season.